Boyle here, coming to you from Revival Baptist Church. We are at our family camp, and I'm joined with my wife and the McMurtry family. It's been a great camp. We've had some good preaching, good activities, and we thought we'd just kind of join together as couples and just kind of discuss some of the questions that have been submitted by the campers here and those online. And they all kind of tended to seem to be focused around parenting. And so we wanted to just take some time out of the day of our camp and answer some of the questions that were submitted and go over them. I have them here, and I just want to I'll read them off, and then we'll just all kind of chime in and give some advice or maybe some what not to do, things like that. But the first question that was submitted is this, and that says, what are some standards you have for young children in church service? And I want to let you guys start off. You've got young ones. My youngest is now 9. So it's been a little while, but, you know, they've all grown up and they grew up in church. So what would you give as far as advice with little kids in church?
Right. So I think with me, that's one my wife could answer more. She's got a lot more experience. I'm always up on the platform the whole time.
He's never with the kids.
So I don't deal with that much, but I did for the first years of our parenting when I was in our previous church. And, you know, and so I guess the main thing for me was I didn't want kids to be a distraction. Right. And I've never had a problem if they want to, you know, draw or color or look at a book or something like that. The main thing, I just don't want them being a distraction. You know, when they're only 2 or 3 years old, you know, they're not going to, you just can't expect them to sit too still. It's just not the way kids are. And so I just don't want them to be a distraction. That's kind of the main thing. And what that takes for each kid is going to be different. And the main thing that I've always tried to tell people, though, is church is not the training ground. It's the testing ground. You know, you don't, and sometimes parents, they decide they're going to do training in the church service, and they start fighting battles and things. It just becomes a huge distraction, and I think that's terrible. I think you need to train them at home, and then you find out how you're doing at church.
I agree. If I add a little bit, and the ladies, you can jump in at any time that you feel that you want to give some insight, because it is true. Ladies typically are the ones doing most of the training. Even if you're not a pastor, you're doing other things. The ladies are the ones watching the little kids. But never ask more from your child than they're physically able to give. And you have to be mindful of that. When you have a little baby, an hour-long service is impossible. They've got so much energy in them. Just make them sit there, do nothing. In fact, not only that, but you're making them sit there and they're not understanding anything. It's even different than a kid where they're able to understand what's being spoken. But little kids, toddlers, they don't know anything of what's being said. And so don't ask more from them than they're able to handle. So you as a parent know each one's different. So, you know, we would let them color. We would have different ways of keeping them occupied. There's nothing wrong with that. But I've heard the extreme where parents would, at home, sit their kid down and set the timer for an hour. They can't move. They can't get up. And that's not right. That should not be done that way. Kids then grow up resenting church. And it's punishment. It's torture. So just, you know, be a merciful parent. And then because church is, I like the analogy you gave, because church is not the training ground, it's the testing ground, there are going to be some tests that come back with failed results. But, hey, you just go back home and you work on it again. It's okay if you fail. It's okay if little Susie starts screaming in service, you got to walk up and leave. And, you know, remember, again, the point isn't, I'm going to teach Susie a lesson right here, right now, and everybody's going to listen until she stops crying. It's get them out of there, get them out of the service so the service continues on, and then you work on that training at a later time or at home. But any thoughts there from the ladies?
Just the same thing along. I've seen kids that grow to, even at a young age, hate going to church because they know they're going to get spanked. They know they're going to get dragged out. So I try to make it fun for Kelly. We just bought her a little magnetic board that she can do animals on, you know, sit there, and it keeps her quiet for a while. So any little thing to keep her occupied.
Yeah, don't be afraid to do that, because I know some people feel like that's, you know, they should have a Bible in their hand and be taking notes.
Yeah.
But
amen. Well, and the thing too, you know, when people ask questions like that about, you know, what standards do you have? I said, I don't even really like answering that question, because then they're going to try to do that same thing. the thing is, you have to know your kid.
Right.
And, you know, if you actually know your kid, you know exactly what they're going to do in a service like that. And they're going to tend to be a maniac. And so you got to figure out ways to deter that. And then as they get older, too, you know, you're not going to be able to do this when they're 2. But, you know, when they start getting a little bit older, you know, you can start talking to them before service and saying, you know, if you can sit through the whole service and be quiet, and I don't have to take you out, you know, you can reward them with something and get them thinking about that. But, you know, that's not going to happen, you know, especially in a family integrated church where you have them in there, you know, from the beginning. You know, where a lot of churches, they don't even bring them into the service till after they're 3 years old, and sometimes it's even older than that.
Yeah.
But, you know, you can't expect too much from your kids like that. It's not realistic, and you will turn church into a miserable thing for them. And eventually, you know, I know they need to listen to the preaching, but eventually they're going to start picking it up and getting interested on their own. That's how it was for me. You know, my parents, they let me do stuff as long as I was quiet. Yeah. And including fall asleep sometimes, because that really
sometimes that wasn't so quiet for some of our kids.
Yeah.
You can hear them snoring. Yeah, you're trying to wake them up. But and then another thing too with that, the other extreme would be, you know, also when they're intentionally misbehaving, when they do need that spanking or they do need the crayons taken from them. You know, because you'll know your child. You'll know when they're acting abnormal. Hey, this is not accepted behavior because you don't normally act this way, so don't start now. So don't be one of those parents that, you know, you write down everything that's said in this broadcast and then you follow that to the T. You know your children, develop a relationship with them, and know when you're asking too much. And then I think the advice I like that I'll probably find myself quoting, it's not the place to train your children, it's a place to test your children. Train them at home. Next question, kind of in the same direction, but it has to do with home. It says, do you have any Bible standards for children at home? And I'm going to take that to mean like Bible requirements for our children, devotions, things like that for our children at home.
Well, I think again, with the standard on that, you know, we don't have this required regimented thing we do. I mean, the kids are around church all the time. They're around preaching all the time. I think the main thing, though, where they have it is through the homeschooling. Yeah. And so that's just kind of part of their curriculum and part of what they're doing. They are reading the Bible through things like that. I don't believe in ever using it for a punishment. Right. Which I know some people do, and I think that's a terrible mistake when you do that. But, you know, we ask a lot of our families, especially when you're in a pastor's home where they're in church all the time. I mean, you take them out soul and you do all these things. And, you know, I don't think, you know, some people are real strict about doing the family devotions and things, and I think that's fine too. But, you know, I think if you're going to do that, you need to make sure you find out a way to keep it fun. Right. And make sure they enjoy it. And, you know, so we don't go real crazy with that stuff. But.
Same here, and I grew up that way as well. My dad had always told us as kids he doesn't want us reading our Bibles and going through these rituals because it's that time of the day or it's that required. He's like, I want you to read your Bible because you want to read your Bible. And really, if you are raising your kids in active church, they're getting so much Bible. They're memorizing verses for the homeschool. They're memorizing verses for the soul winning program. It's not that there's a lack of Bible, but you want to see them read it because they want to. And I've seen it in homes where it's like Bible reading is a punishment that you have to start your day off with. You know, sit down and you have to read your Bible for 30 minutes or an hour or whatever. And I've never seen it work well where you're forcing them to sit there and read the Bible. It's like it's almost like schoolwork for them. Right. You know, it's like, no, I don't want it. I want Bible reading to be like, this is my relationship with the Lord. So in a great setting, in a proper home setting, there's not a lack of Bible, just based on all the activities in homeschooling. So anything above that, I want it to be their own personal desire. And it's great as a parent to walk in and see your kid reading their Bible in their bedroom, see them praying on their own. That means more to me than having to holler at them every morning to sit down and grab their Bible and read it. But again, these are just how we've done it. You know, take it for what it's worth. But some good answers.
I know for me, at first, I read through the Bible for the first time when I was 9 years old. And nobody made me do it. Right. But my dad, you know, he encouraged it. And he just told me, he said, if you read through that Bible, he said, I'll take you to the Christian bookstore and I'll get you any Bible there you want. You know, we'll get your name engraved in the front. And, you know, and I thought that was just a huge deal. He just got me fired up about it. And I did it. And then I got that new Bible. I wanted to read through it too.
Yeah.
And since 1990, there's only been 2 years that I didn't read through the Bible at least once.
You're almost qualified to be a pastor.
Almost.
Almost. Getting close.
Yeah. But no, I mean, it kind of reminds me of the message that you preached the other night, and that was where there's those people who don't believe the standards, but they're miserable by them and they're forced to. So anybody who doesn't hold those standards is like, well, if I have to wear this dress, they have to wear the dress. If I have to act this way, they have to act this way. Versus someone who holds those standards because they believe them, then if someone else isn't at that point in their life, it's not offending them. It's just like, well, hey, I do this not because I have to, because I want to. So sometimes parents who have to read their Bible and they then pass it down to their children, if I have to, you have to, and it's not that way at all. You want them to want to do those things. And so, you know, a lot of that is more of the spirit than anything. Here's another question when it comes to child rearing. It says, how do you balance discipline for a child who purposely causes mischief for attention? I know we wouldn't have anything like that being pastors, but maybe hypothetically.
Once again, every child's personality is different.
Right.
So for me, if I feel like, I don't know, Robin, if it's like this with you, but I feel like if a child is acting out more, they need attention. They need positive attention. So yeah, you need to punish when they have done crossed one of your boundaries, such as disobeying, lying, whatever. But maybe they do need them one at one time. So maybe spend a week focusing on that child, really giving them positive affirmation. And that sounds like politically correct, but it's true. Kids tend to act out when they're feeling
again,
neglect.
It comes down to just knowing your kid.
Yeah.
You have to find their motivator. You know, that was when I taught in the Christian school, especially with boys, I learned every boy has a motivator, something that just makes him want to do something. Right. There's a thing, they have that thing that you can use to kind of motivate them to do good. And so it's just a matter of knowing your kids, and you'll be able to figure out what to do. You know, it's just when it's the neglect that's gonna, turn the kid bad. And you can spank your kid and still neglect them.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, because anybody can blow their top and take 5 seconds to beat the fire out of them, but it typically takes a little more than that. So you have to know your kid.
Right, and it's a very good point. Just because you discipline your child doesn't mean you love your child. And the scriptures even tell us that when they're saying some have even disciplined for their own pleasure. Like the parents are actually receiving the joy, the satisfaction of beating little Johnny for making the mess that he made, and you feel like, yes. And it didn't help Johnny, it helped you. And God refers that he's not like that he does it for our own benefit. And so we want to make sure we're doing that when it comes to the discipline side. But sometimes kids are crying out for attention, and the only time mom or dad ever even notice them is when they're doing something wrong. And that's a neglect on the parent's part. It should not be that the only time you look at your child or acknowledge them is when you're correcting them. And sadly, that's what happens. And so find ways to, recognize your child. Just, hey, you did a great job. Like, things I did, I also learned from my dad. I come home and I just randomly have, I was out at the gas station, I picked up a candy bar, and I'm like, I'm going to give this one to Brian today. Come home and hey, Brian, I thought of you today. I got you something. What is it? Let me see. And they're all, it doesn't matter what it is at that point. He's just glad I thought about it. And I'm like, oh, here's a candy bar. I'm like, oh, yeah. And you just randomly, and as parents, which kid needs that. They don't then have to cry out for attention. They're getting that. But if the only time dad ever thinks about them or talks about them is when they're in trouble, you'll find them doing that. But I would never advise giving them the candy bar because they're acting out, wanting attention. They need discipline at that point, but then find a way to give them a positive engagement of attention at a later point. Because once you feed that monster, it never ends. That's when you get those problems where now they're doing all kinds of things just to get attention. Any other thoughts on that before I move on?
No, that's good.
All right. And let's see here. Next question. What are some ways and how often do you spend one-on-one time, that kind of piggybacks off of this, do you spend one-on-one time with multiple children of different ages? So how do you balance one-on-one time with so many children?
Well, one thing is, you know, especially when you have a lot of kids, you know, you can't just come up with a schedule really, but you do play some of it by ear. But the one thing that we've always done, my dad did this, you know, even just that once a year, we always knew, you know, we were going out with Dad for a birthday. And I've done that with our kids from the time they're little. We take them out to eat, take them to the store, buy something for them. So there's things like that where they know that's going to happen. But then, like, even with her, just when it comes to shopping for groceries and stuff, you know, usually she'll just take one of them.
I rotate the kids.
And then, you know,
take them out to eat.
Yeah, do something special for them. So there's kind of that too. So it's not just like a once a year thing. But yeah, so having some kind of planned things that they can anticipate is important. But then too, you know, just playing it by ear, and you know, and try to be fair, and you know, take turns if you've got something that you do regular. Because you know, when kids are little, especially too, going to the gas station and getting a drink is a big deal,
right,
for them. And you can, you know, my kids have always, you know, they enjoyed things like that. In fact, with my boys, one time, and they were probably 12 or 13, maybe even a little bit older, I can't remember, but you know, they didn't have a job yet. This was before they had any money, and we had picked up a bunch of scrap metal at our house. A lot of stuff had been left behind. We took it to a place, got some cash for it, and so, you know, I had like an extra $20 or something. I just wanted to get rid of it, but we had that extra $20. I thought I was gonna have to pay to get rid of it, and they gave me money for it, and I just told the boys, I said, let's go to the gas station and blow it on stuff. And they were so excited about it. And we went, I think I let them get energy drinks, and you know, we just spent all that money. We just blew it on junk in the gas station, and they thought it was the greatest thing in the world. When we went on vacation one year, I gave all the kids like $10 or something, and like, this is for gas station drinks and snacks and stuff. And I mean, there's something about going there and buying that junk. Kids love it. And so, you know, take advantage of those cheap pleasures that you can give those kids, because when they get older, the pleasures get a little more expensive.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to, you've probably heard, it seems like we're saying the same things, but it's true. That is, you have to know your children. You have to know what they need, and you're developing a relationship. I mean, it'd almost be like, the question be like, how do you know when to spend one-on-one time with your wife? That question in and of itself is like, why are you asking that question? You know, you should know your wife. It's the same with your children. You should know your children. You should know when they need attention. And I know some of these are parents that are maybe foreseeing these events in their life, but you'll develop, you know, they're babies now, but as they grow, you're gonna walk home and they're gonna come running into your arms, and your heart's gonna melt, and that's when you're gonna be like, I'm gonna bring them home with a little prize or a drink from the gas station, or hop in the car, let's go get an ice cream. You'll make those memories. Just don't forget to do that, because some of the simplest things just that take just a little bit of time, maybe even a little bit of money, means so much. Just think back to some of your memories. Or you say, well, I don't have any. Well, think what you would like to have had, and start making those memories for your children. So one-on-one time is important, but I think it just naturally happens as you develop those relationships together. Next question. When do you know when to start spanking? I think like when they cry. I mean, I'm just there are people that way, so we better clarify.
Yes. Yeah. Well, this is something too.
This is my trigger.
Yeah. You can't tell anybody an age, because if you tell anybody,
right?
Because here's the problem with the thinking of a lot of people. I'm very careful how I answer these things. You tell somebody an age, they're going to start doing it the very day of that age. If somebody asks how hard to spank, then they're going to do that hard of a spanking. I might be answering for a 12-year-old. They're going to want to do it on their 1-year-old or whatever. And the thing is, you know, when we say start spanking, you got to understand, first off, when they're real little, you do not have to really inflict much pain at all. You would, the power of that deep no and a little, I mean, it sends the message. I with my little kids, I can give them the same swat playing with them on the rear, and a lot of times they'll look at me.
To see
And if I'm
yeah.
playing, then they you know, smile. If I got a mean look on my face, they cry. And so, you know, I think it's okay to spank your kids while they're young, but boy, when, you know, it's not, you do not hurt that child.
Right.
You know, do not, you know, you don't have to inflict pain. You just need to send a message, and they need to be old enough to understand that they're doing something wrong.
Right.
And some parents, they're just like spanking their kid because their little baby because it's crying,
Because
and
it's
the baby
annoying them.
yeah, the
Right.
baby has no idea why it's getting spanked. That is absolutely horrible.
We've heard preaching that says, like, what? From the time you bring them home from the hospital?
Yeah.
That's horrible.
Yeah, you know, those are with girls maybe a little bit later, but boy, as
Makes me
soon as you bring them
so
home from the
mad.
hospital, it's like, shut up.
Right.
It's
First,
horrible.
you have no idea what you're talking about. And, you know, when it comes to all of these questions, something that a lot of parents, and, you know, I get it, if you didn't come from a good home, and if you're a first-time parent, you're going to feel very insecure. That's pretty normal. But something you've got that every parent needs to realize is that the two most qualified people in the world to figure out how to handle your child are you two.
Right.
Because of the fact that that child is a combination of the two of you. And so you're going to understand their behavior better than I'm going to understand their behavior, because they're going to be a lot like you were. You know, they're going to be a lot like the dad or like the mom. And so you're going to remember what made you click when you were that age. You're going to remember the things that would calm you down or straighten you out. And so you've got your lifetime of experience. You also, you know, if you're close to your parents, you have them also. They dealt with you when you were that age. I mean, take advantage of that resource
Yeah.
if you have it. Because you don't remember being 1 and 2 and 3 years old, but your parents remember when you were that age. They could help you out a little bit in that area. So, I mean, just understand animals know how to take care of their kids, and they do it by instinct. And I'm telling you, you know, just follow your instincts with these things.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't seem right to just, you know, beat your little 6-month-old, it's because it's not. And, you know, you need to understand it's not about just beating them. It's not that pain makes them good. It's just you're sending a message, and if they're not capable of understanding that, then you're not doing anything.
And I agree 100% on that. And you know, there are those parents that are out there that are like, it's like, if you just make me uncomfortable, you're going to suffer and you're going to hurt and you're going to wish you didn't. That's not parenting. Parenting is training. So the whole point is training them, getting them to understand. But then there's the other side where it's like there's no discipline at all. And I think the thing to remember, especially with little ones, it's just getting them to understand where the boundaries are. And you like you said, you can enforce that by just a little swat on a diaper. And they don't even feel it, but their little will got broken. They've been told no, and their world's over.
You know?
That's all they need. And you know, even like, you know, when you know, they're babies and they're like arcing that back and like they're fighting you, and you just, hey, no. And so it's funny how some toddlers can grow up all the way into young child age and never have been told no, but the parents don't realize it because they never told them no. They just distracted them. So little Johnny wants that, and they're over here, instead of telling little Johnny, no, you're not allowed to play with that, they just distract him, and they just distract him. And his will has never been broken. He's never been told no. He's never had to submit. He's just been tricked into obeying. And then you end up with bigger battles later on when they're older. But not everything's a battle. Don't be that parent. Don't take everything as black and white. Figure out where your boundaries are individually, different for each child. And then, you know, there's ways to make them and teach them rather than just inflicting some form of pain, because then you end up in child abuse, and child abuse is wrong at any age. So that's any other thoughts on?
Well, think about this too. So Hannah, she's 11 months old, you know, and she already knows what no means. She'll start doing things, and you say no, and then sometimes she'll stop, but then what she'll even do sometimes, she'll kind of like look at me, you know, to see if I'm watching, or even just to see, and I can make a face at her, and she knows not to do it. They already, you know, from that age, already know how to push the limits. They're smarter than you think. And even at her age too, and when they get a little older, and parents have probably seen this, where when they're doing something they're not supposed to, when they'll be playing with something they don't have, and you can just say their name and they'll jump.
Right.
Because they know. And that's when, and so when you start seeing that they know what's going on, that's when you can kind of figure out how to deal with it and learn how to communicate with them that they're not supposed to do this.
That's
And
about a year with us. About a year when they
but I'm telling you, at a year old, you do not have to spank them hard.
No.
At all. If you're breaking out the wooden spoon for a 1-year-old, I feel sorry for your child.
Right, and then the other thing too, if you start when they're that young, and not to the point of like we're saying these hard spankings, but just that sharp no or that tap on the rear end, and it's the end of the world. It's a nuclear explosion for them. But what happens is by the time they're 3 and 4, when you do start spanking or whatever age that may be, as they get older, you don't even have to spank hardly at all, because when you snap your fingers and all kids make mistakes, but a spanking's not the answer for everything. Those that don't have kids, it's like I found myself there. You see a kid misbehave and you're like, if that was my kid, I'd spank him, right? I mean, we all have that.
And then you have kids.
And then you have kids and you realize the spanking's not the answer for everything.
Right. And along with spanking too, and just disciplining, remember too, it's your job to do that, but it's also your job to comfort them after that too.
Right.
And something that's very effective, and I frankly just think it's super cute too, like with our little girls, whenever they've been being bad, I can just kind of get in their face and look them right in the eye and just no, and they'll do the poochy lip, breaks their little heart, they start crying, but then you give them a big hug, you just give them a big hug, and a lot of times I'll put them down. I'm like, are you gonna touch that? And then they kind of learn their lesson that way, and a lot of parents, they just put the beating on them. You got to give them the comfort too. Right,
and then all it creates is maybe submission and obedience, but no love for dad or mom. Even as we were older, the way my dad disciplined us, and I carried that down, was it was 3 whacks for every occasion, no matter if it was big or little, and it was always with the belt. And I remember asking my dad later, like, why, didn't we not get 4 for this one or 8? And my dad said this. He said, I never wanted to spank you out of rage. I wanted to spank you just with the intention of correcting you. And so he would always send us to our room, let whether it was us cooling off or him cooling off. So he would not walk in there in the heat of the anger, because sometimes kids can push your buttons, and you're not disciplining them to correct, you're disciplining them because you're upset. And that is not proper discipline. And so I learned that from my dad. We'd send the kids to the room, then we'd go in and say, hey, do you know why you're in the room? Yes. Okay, well, what do I have to do at this point? And then the benefit of that is, when it's over, it's over. We don't remind them of that all day long. You were wicked this morning. I already had to. It's just, it was over. It was over. And sometimes as they get older, it's like kids need that. They need that. You can just see they need that spanking. And when you give it to them, it's just like they're fresh again. They're just, and so again, I think it all goes down to.
You're talking about reconciliation. You've got to be able to come to that point, because when you do that, if you don't do that, then they just figure out ways to just trick you. And to sneak around and do it. That's not good.
Right, and this kind of, again, with discipline, how do you manage back talking from small children? What would you tolerate from, as far as back talking? You say something, they say no, or they talk back.
I mean, I think it's the same thing. That's where you can look at them and give them that deep voice. You don't tell me no.
That's what we do.
You go into the low voice mode, and
let me ask you this way. Would you ever allow your kid to tell you no at any age?
No, it's never okay for them to
That's
tell
where
you
I'm
no.
at. Yeah, I've seen parents where they let their little kids tell them no.
No.
It's like, you don't, I never could tell my dad no. Like, that would be horrible. Like, but again, don't allow for that. But the answer is not get your belt out for your 6-month-old and bend them over. And, that's not how, there's ways to teach them much better, and biblical ways of teaching rather than just punishing. Because if you do that, they don't know why they're being punished anyway. But if you do the stern no, it's a showdown, and they know why you've told them that, and they know what no means. So, so good questions. There's just a couple more. Let me see here. 2 more. What are some good boundaries to set for your children in regards to unsaved family or neighborhood children?
I mean, that depends on a lot of factors. I mean, obviously,
we've never let our kids play with unsaved. neighborhood.
Well, not
we've
like,
never really been
yeah,
around
we've
neighborhood
not,
kids.
like, but at the same time, while we live out in we lived out in
Yeah.
the country for a long time, we've never just let them hang out with the neighborhood kids. But at the same time, too, if our kids are around other kids, they play with them, whether it's in the park,
Right.
Our kids have always been very social, and we don't be like, hey, those kids are unsaved over there. But I think the important thing is just as long as they understand, hey, if you ever see certain behavior,
Right.
get away. So when they're real little, you don't really have to worry about it. But when they start getting older, you have kids that'll sometimes get start talking nasty, cussing. You have to teach your kids. You got to walk away from that kind of thing.
Right.
We've had those situations, haven't we?
Yeah.
Where that's happened.
Yeah, and then with family too, you got to play that by ear too, because obviously it's family. I don't believe in just looking for reasons to shut family out of your life. I think you should look for ways to keep the relationship strong.
Amen.
The important thing is don't put yourself in compromising situations. And so if they've got cousins that are just heathens, I mean, by all means, love them, but don't let them go spend the night at their house. So it's all about keeping yourself at the advantage. Don't give them the advantage in any situation. And then it's knowing your kids too. Some kids are leaders, others are followers, and some kids have a lot of character and a love for the Lord. Some just go with the flow. So it really depends on your child when it comes to a lot of those things.
Yeah, I would agree. Because the extreme of that is no kid is good enough to be around your kid. And we've all seen them, where they even use that to, like, we don't participate in any family get-togethers because, I come from an unsaved family and all the cousins aren't saved, therefore we don't, and it creates this, even in the church setting, it's like they come in, they can't fellowship with any of the kids, and that just creates resentment in the heart of the kids. Growing up, we were never allowed to play with neighborhood kids. Outside of in our yard, sometimes my dad would say, hey, they can come over and play a little bit. We'd play, but it was monitored by us. We never went to their house and played.
You were at the advantage.
Right, we had the advantage. So we could call, hey, we don't talk like that here. Hey, we aren't allowed. Help, it's time to come in, kids. So never sleepovers for sure. We never did any of that sort. But just remember, with family, have a lot more mercy than you do. I might let my kids go to a family reunion and hang out with kids that I would never let them play with, just strangers in a park, but it's because they're family. But it still is structured, and I do have the advantage. But if I had a child that I felt that was influencing them, then I would say, we're going to skip this reunion this year because I feel like it might affect my child. But be merciful. I know so many well-meaning parents, their parents are unsaved, so they never let them be around their grandkids, and I don't think that's wise. I think that you honor them. They're still your mom and dad. That's their grandparents, saved or unsaved. Now, obviously, you would request, hey, I don't want them to be around whatever it is, the boundaries you've set. No alcohol, no rock music. Right. And if they're not willing to concede those areas, they don't need to be around your kids anyway. But you'll find some parents are just wanting to be around, or grandparents wanting to be around their kids, but parents have created too strict of an environment where no one's good enough. So it takes discernment, and just be, as a parent, you're watching your children. You're looking at the product. If you're seeing a rebellious streak all of a sudden come out, you got to think, where are they learning this from? What's happening? And set that accordingly. That leads us to the last question, and it says, what are some mistakes that you've made early on in child rearing that you've learned from? If you could go back and do it again.
I think probably making just too big of a stink out of some things. Yeah.
Being too strict.
Especially
having too high of expectations.
Yeah, that's why the firstborn gets the double portion of the blessing.
Yeah, it is.
Every parent's going to be perfect. Well, that child's going to be perfect, and they're probably a little too harsh on them sometimes, and expect way too much from them. You don't want to try to fix all your regrets from your life, with your child. Where obviously you don't want them to make some of the same mistakes, but I think sometimes parents they punish their child almost as a way to punish themselves for all the areas where they messed up, and I don't think that's I don't think that's good. And I think when it comes to a lot of things, you know, even just like, you know, behavior and stuff, there's probably some areas where we could have lightened up a little bit and not been.
We were really strict.
Yeah,
First
it's harsh. Yeah.
But you know, it goes to the point, which kind of has been the theme I've noticed, and that is, as new parents, we're like super strict because we act as if, you know, raising these children, it's going to be like one mistake and we got bad, rebellious kids.
Right.
And I think you'll see that those that have more than one child, you know, the more they have, it seems like the lenient we get, but yet the product is the same. And I think we realize, I guess I don't have to be that strict for them to love the Lord and to turn out right. And so I'm not, you know, you have to go through that process. Every parent does. Mm-hmm. But you learn the more you have that it's not as hard to have good kids as you might think. You can make mistakes. You can, you know, you can learn and improve. Some of the regrets or things I've learned were we waited too long with Joshua before we had those showdowns with the stern no, because we were they don't understand. I don't think they, you know, 6, 7, 8 months. Like, yeah, they don't know. They don't, because they can't really communicate yet.
Right.
But they, like you said, you can see them look at you and they're testing you. And we just waited till it was too long, and so it ended up with us. We had bigger showdowns that lasted a little longer, maybe, than we did with the little ones. When sometimes just pushing their hand away from. They go to reach it, and you push their hand away. They'll cry, and then they'll put their hand back, and you push their hand away, and this is like, all right, we can play this all day, right? But there's no discipline as far as injury to them, but you're teaching them. No, we're not joking. This is a no. And so our thought my takeaway was, and you probably would agree, we started the training process. I don't want to use the word discipline process. We started the training process a lot younger, and the product was a lot easier to get.
Well, and you mentioned too, you get a little more lenient, but I think what it is often people's excessive strictness is a sign of their insecurity. And so I think what you see when people are lightening up on the strictness, it's their confidence level is up, because they're not afraid one mistake and I've lost my child, you know. And so, you know, you find out that, hey, kids go through phases, you know, they grow out of some of these things, you know, they're going to be fine, you know, they can get hurt and they'll heal from it. You know, we don't want our first kid to ever, you know, break a bone or anything like that, or get stitches. Kids are going to get hurt, you know. There's going to be accidents, things are going to happen, and you can't let them, you know, you don't want to make them miserable trying to protect them, kind of like the government's doing in our country right now. You know, they're making us all miserable trying to protect us, you know. And don't do that as a parent. Let them live life. Let them be wild, you know, let them get hurt, and not everything has to be a major battle.
All right, well, that's it for the questions. I appreciate those that submitted them. I hope this is a blessing. If it sparks more questions, there's probably a way to leave a comment under there. You can do so, and it'll get to us, and we can maybe answer those in future sessions. But this is an annual camp. We hope that you can come. It's about this time every year. We hope to see you come. It's just kind of been a very edifying week. I've enjoyed having the McMurtry family here. They made a big effort to be here. He'll have preached 5 times before we let him go back, so he'll be tired of us, and we'll be tired of him. But we're so glad that they could come. But stay tuned for more videos like this.